So let's just dive right in. Again, welcome everyone today to our cryptocurrency discussion for TEC Canada. And of course, full disclosure, I'm a very active investor in this space, as well as an active investor in the mining space of Bitcoin. So just to make people aware that, my thoughts are just my thoughts, but I am also very active in this space. So just to make that aware to everyone. So today I'm really proud to have two of my members, Taylor Davis from PurePave Technologies and Pierce Unjainwalla from Knak, as well as Revenue Pulse, two of the fastest growing companies in Ottawa and two founding members of my small business group in Ottawa. And small business does not bring justice to the size that they have become as a business and to the passion they have for their industry and how brilliant they are as leaders and as entrepreneurs. Where this all came to be, this conversation was really basically every January, I talk to my members in terms of what's something new we could create as a group to bring value to everyone. And this year, of course, with everything that happened with COVID and the macro landscape and the stock market crash in March and the rebound, like people were just wondering, like, how do other members manage their wealth? Who do they work with? Do they do it themselves? What do they invest in? What's their view of the world? These were all questions that members had. And, we never really talked about it in that deep of a conversation during our regular group meetings. So we decided to form a Tiger team for those interested. And it's actually been the most popular Tiger team that I've ever created. I have over 70% participation between both of my groups. And basically what we do is every month we come together and we talk about a different topic. Now, when it came time to do the first one in December, the top of the list that everyone wanted to talk about was Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And what that did was actually brought to light how many members in the group were actively participating in that space. We weren't really advocate about it. We weren't really yelling on top of a mountain about it, but everyone was actively participating for various reasons. So it created a really interesting educational for everyone and really opened the door now for us to have these open debates on macroeconomics, on the future of cryptocurrency, on how we manage our wealth and how we invest in Bitcoin. And Taylor and Pierce are joining us today because they were two of the most active in that space, very knowledgeable, and also have integrated Bitcoin into their business strategies as well, which we'll talk a bit from that perspective. So today we're going to cover their background, how they came to be, Bitcoin investors, how they discovered the space, their view of the space, the opportunity, as well as why they've integrated Bitcoin into their business strategies and how fellow tech members could do the same and how to get more educated from the space. So I hope you enjoy our conversation today with Taylor and Pierce, and hopefully today's conversation opens the door for you to explore more about this space as a member. So before we dive in, I'd like to introduce Pierce Unjainwalla, CEO of Knak, and Taylor Davis, founder and CEO of PurePave Technologies. I'd love the two of you guys to maybe give us a little bit of intro on your business. Pierce, maybe you want to go first.
Yeah, so Knak is an enterprise email and landing page creation platform. We work with some of the largest companies in the world to help them create their marketing campaigns and keep them on brand, enable their marketers to collaborate no matter where they are and work in virtual environments, and produce their campaigns faster than ever before. We're integrated with all of the major marketing automation platforms, namely Marketo, Eloqua, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and Responses.
Amazing. Taylor, give us a little bit of insights on PurePave.
Yeah, sure, guys. PurePave Technologies started out actually as a specialty construction business, just doing specialty paving, and over time found a big need to develop an effective winterized permeable pavement for our climate. There was not much on the market that was doing the job correctly, and so we did a lot of research and development over the years, working with IRAP NRC and other programs to develop something that actually functions to infiltrate water at the highest rate available in the country, and also maintain a strength of pavement 6 times that of regular asphalt. So we sell and distribute these materials to certified contractors across the country. And recently, in order to accelerate the adoption of the system among contractors, we developed a new software to enable shoppers that would be shopping on other contractors' websites to be able to customize and design their own PurePave projects using a combination of our materials and their contractors' materials, and design and price and purchase those projects online. So that's what we're working on today to accelerate the business, and that's where we came from.
Amazing. Thanks for that, guys. And I just have to say that Taylor and Pierce were both founding members of our group and have been fantastic to work with over the past few years. They're some of the fastest growing businesses in Ottawa. So it's exciting to have them here as well. So let's dive into this discussion. Yes, it's cryptocurrencies, it's Bitcoin. For some members, they may be watching this and saying this is their first real deep dive into it. Yes, it's in the news, it's in the papers, but trying to understand it is super important. I'd love to learn your initial Bitcoin stories in terms of, who brought that to your attention, how you discovered it, and when in time that came to be, and any fun stories around that. Because usually when people get into cryptocurrencies, it usually begins with Bitcoin and then it opens up a universe that's even much bigger. So Taylor, I'd love to hear what your Bitcoin discovery story was.
Yeah, sure. I had been an early listener of Joe Rogan Experience way back in the day. I actually live streamed one of the first videos that they did, just watching them on Twitter. And on one of the episodes, this was shortly after the Occupy Wall Street stuff was happening, right? So 2011, I was pretty young and just really interested in learning about how the world works, especially as it relates to money and finance at the highest level. And so the Occupy Wall Street things shone a pretty big light on all that stuff, central banks, and kind of how that works, how money is printed, how it's how it circulates in the economy, and everything like this. And Joe Rogan had mentioned, or a guest actually mentioned, that there were a lot of guys buying illegal drugs online on the Silk Road with this new digital currency that was undetected and all this stuff. And it sounded really sketchy at the time. But that was the first time I heard about Bitcoin, sometime early in 2012. And because of the way it was framed on the podcast, I had no interest in buying anything that was for illicit use. But then a year later, I was working at Shopify, and luckily enough, I had exposure to a number of developers and really smart people who kind of were giving this some attention, just like, this is a really cool thing. Maybe we should check this out. And so I started looking into it further, and ended up buying some after sort of having the idea validated by learning about how the global finance system and how that works, and combining that with all of the developers who had pretty keen interest on the technicality of how the system worked. And those two things combined sort of gave me personally a desire to use it, and more like a vote, like I support this system. This is cool. A borderless system that can be used by anybody without somebody else devaluing it over time. Matter of fact, due to its growth curve, it seems like it might increase in value over time. So way back then, it was just sort of a cool thing to be interested in, and vote on holding some of this stuff, and just to see where it went over time. So it was more of an intellectual curiosity than an investment for me. And but being involved back then really opened the doors to what it became today.
Absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. You were really early in that space. So good on you for having that open mind and that flexible mindset to look at both angles and make that choice. Pierce, how about yourself? I never heard your Bitcoin discovery story, so I'd love to hear. Yeah, how about yourself?
I wish I had as open of a mind as Taylor did, but I remember the first time I heard about it was in 2011. A friend of a friend was telling me about it. I thought it sounded crazy. Like, why would you ever buy like these coins on the internet and pay money for them? And she ended up going to San Francisco and like got really deep in it. And we never heard from her again. So she probably did very well. And then I think I kind of rediscovered it in 2016. There's that documentary on Netflix, Banking on Bitcoin, which caught my attention. And from that, that was very focused on the technology and kind of the central ledger and how there's more trust in that. And I was like, it seems like a cool idea, but it really only clicked for me like in December of 2020 when I kind of connected the dots between the money printing and kind of understood. I think that was the first time I really took the time to understand Bitcoin and how it works and what the unique properties are of it. So yeah, it's kind of a three-step process for me.
Interesting. And for me, similar, being an engineer by trade, I've, and being my previous business in the open source world, I've heard about this since day one, but a bit like Taylor and like Pierce, it was hard to dive in. As an investor, for me, it's usually I'm not someone who picks the bottom, nor do I try to time the top. So for me, it's like looking at seeing when the technology gets validated, and it all really happened for me in the 2016 to 2018 cycle when a lot of things that happened in the space, from the fork and the ICO craze, and at the same time a lot of new rails to onboard people in that space, and now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. So for me, although knew about it from a very long time, really jumping in was in the 2017, 2018, and heavy this year, like Pierce, the current economic situation and the macro landscape change. And that's why I love about our discussions too. I think both of you are actually extremely in tune on the macro side, which is super fun. So you did talk about, you kind of answered one of my questions, which was what made you want to do a deeper dive. Once you open Pandora's box, and we'll start with Pierce, what's the biggest thing that has like amazed you or surprised you, or you're like, wow, this is way more than I thought it was, as you start digging deeper into Bitcoin, into cryptocurrencies? I'd love to see how you evolved over time.
Well, I think, reading the book, The Bitcoin Standard, and learning more about the history of money, I think for me, I just kind of assumed that like the Canadian dollar, the US dollar is going to be what we use to pay for things forever. But going back in the history, you kind of see that whether it's currencies or stores of value, that they change over time. And a lot of the time that is driven by technology improvements. And so, being a tech guy, I felt like I've seen this story a lot of times in tech, and just understanding money more and what it actually is, it felt like there could easily be a tech disruption in money. And I think that's actually happening right now.
Where would you, if you were to overlap your belief in terms of a timeline compared to other technology disruptions that you've seen in other spaces, what kind of parallel would you compare, the Bitcoin and the disruption of money versus whether it's e-commerce or your space marketing? How can you help other members maybe do some parallels to other industries? Where do you think we're at?
Yeah, I think like if I go back to when Uber first started, right? Like I remember Uber at first was only like black cars, right? Like it was like a high-end cab essentially. I feel like we're kind of there right now with Bitcoin, where like people have heard of it. Some people are starting to use it now. The people who use it are like, this is so much better than the alternative. So I think if I was going to relate it to something, it'd probably be like Uber in like the very early days of like maybe year 1 or 2.
Very cool. How about you, Taylor? As you've been involved at a much earlier stance than Pierce and I. So you've been opening Pandora's box for 8 years, if almost. So what are some those aha moments or things that really amaze you about the space? And like Pierce, where do you think we're at if you could draw a parallel in any other industry?
Well, I think the first thing that amazed me was looking at the value of these things go up. Just right from the first year, from 2013 till I think it was late 2014.
Hmm.
I had my wallet, my phone on my wallet, or vice versa, and I actually might have sold because I was just so young and really could have used the money. But lucky for me, I went on a trip to Thailand, and my phone being my wallet, silly me, fresh off of the airplane off a 26-hour flight, my buddies wanted to go downtown Bangkok and party right away, and I was like, I literally asleep when they came into the hostel. They woke me up, called me a baby for not going, whatever. So we go downtown, and the first sip of beer that I take puts me lights out. There was something in it. And I didn't live to see the rest of the story, but I woke up with no cell phone. So we got robbed, and fortunately that was a forced hodl, I call it, because a few of my friends who bought Bitcoin with me at the same time, they ended up selling their coins when I think they were 3 or 4x in value. So they had sold. I thought, oh, my loss, my Bitcoins are gone. I started buying more. So when the price went down, I started buying more. So fast forward through to 2016 and 17, when the ramp up really got interesting. That's when I looked to see if there's a way to recover my old coins. And so really just the experience of going through the user journey of watching the price go up, watching it crash, understanding how private keys work through literally needing them to recover my belongings, and coming to understand and view the whole Bitcoin sphere as something that could really blossom if things continue on in the direction that it looks like they're forecasted to at the time, with empty money supply increasing just at the slow rate that it was in the more regular
Hmm.
world. I viewed it sort of as, hey, like a long-term insurance against any craziness, and here we are. But what's I think far more interesting than the journey to this point is what's happening right now in the world and in technology. And the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin, I think in the early days, was the most interesting thing to me. The fact that there weren't a group of people who could succumb to human greed and manipulation and all the unfortunate characteristics of people with extreme power. I really liked that aspect of it, and I thought, where else could this go? The ICO boom hit, and people's got really creative, imagining up all these wonderful scenarios. But a few of them are turning out to play into something else today as well, and the whole space is just really interesting, truly fascinating to me.
Absolutely, and we could talk about that a little bit afterwards in terms of it's more about it's more than just Bitcoin, and there is this whole world of decentralized finance which is disrupting that space and allowing everyone to become their own banks. Now that's on the personal front, and of course on the business front. Let's turn it to business, because we are in with Tech Canada. We're here to talk about Bitcoin and crypto for members in general. So let's talk about the 6 roles of a CEO, which I mentioned a lot in our group. And one of those roles is to be the investor, or to be the capital allocator. Right? It's you're the coach, you're the leader, you're the visionary, but you also have to be a capital allocator. And a lot of studies shown that CEOs who are great capital allocators are some of the highest ranked leaders of all time, because they know how to deploy money in the right way, whether it's investing in their people, investing in other industries, in R&D, over whatever that may be. So if we put our CEO hats on for our 2,000 members across Canada, and we talk about Bitcoin from that perspective, we saw an unprecedented year from a macro perspective with the coronavirus, the central banks that really started in 2008, but now really got accelerated this year. And all of a sudden, out of all of this, we started getting two CEOs that have been known to disrupt in their space, Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy, and of course, Elon Musk with Tesla, using Bitcoin both on their P&L side, in other words, accepting Bitcoin from a payment perspective, and also using Bitcoin from a balance sheet perspective, in other words, trying to protect the value of their assets so that they can redeploy their capital in the future to help continue to grow their business. Now, they are publicly traded companies, but whether you're $1 billion company or a $100 million company or $1 million company, these types of rules apply. And both of you have adopted similar strategies for your business. And I'd love to talk about that in terms of what made you conclude that this was a strategy that you need, not just for Pierce and Taylor, the entrepreneur, but Pierce and Taylor, the CEO. So Pierce, I'd love to turn it to you to talk about Knak's strategy and what made you come to that conclusion. What did you do from a research perspective? How did you present it to your team? So give us a bit of that story. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. So, Knak is a technology company. We pride ourselves on being innovators in our space. And I think part of that innovation is always being curious and trying new things. So with Bitcoin, we wanted to be one of the first firms that accepted Bitcoin as payment. So that's something we did. Just kind of our culture at Knak. I brought it to our accounting team and people were like, yeah, let's try it out. It sounds good. And then in terms of P&L, Knak, we're bootstrapped, so we're reinvesting everything back into the company. So P&L for Knak doesn't make a lot of sense, but my other businesses that do have cash reserves, we have invested a significant portion of that into Bitcoin.
Amazing. How about for you, Taylor? Again, coming from the space for so long was probably a natural fit. So were you, let me ask you this, were you ahead of Elon and Michael, or were they the inspiration to make that decision? So, and if you were ahead, that's okay. I'll call Elon myself and tell him that Taylor was the first. So
Pascal, I think you guys know the time that I purchased these sunglasses was shortly after our boy Michael Saylor came online and announced that MicroStrategies was all in. That was the first sign to me that something crazy was about to come. And so I did beat Elon, but not Michael. Michael's play really gave me the inner strength to want to pull off something so crazy as to put a huge portion of your corporate holdings and treasury into Bitcoin. Just seeing what they were doing, understanding and digesting the logic of not why a company with who doesn't have $500 million to park in Bitcoin, seeing them articulate their position, they evaluated every investment opportunity in the world. What are we going to do with this $500 million now that they're printing money at this rate in March, right? Michael was articulating that, he couldn't sleep at night because he had a $500 million problem. And so then I just extrapolate back to my own position. Okay, my shareholders and my company has a smaller but equally as important problem, because proportionate to the amount of wealth that MicroStrategies has, my problem is actually bigger. Because while I have less money, it means more to our company. This is the fuel that we have to grow and do our thing. And I don't want to have to focus as a CEO on preserving the damn wealth that I've created over this time. The difficulty and challenges have been extraordinary to get to this point where we have more than $0. So in finding the best place to park those funds, that's the most important thing right now, because I'm not going to continue working and just spin my wheels in the mud as the value gets just dispersed amongst the general population as they print those dollars. So watching Michael articulate that position, understanding that, wow, this is so compelling that this is what we've been waiting for in the Bitcoin community. Where I can just wait, sit and wait now, and watch all of the other funds and legendary investors and entrepreneurs, legendary entrepreneurs, get in line one after the other. And I bet you all of the appropriate tech companies are going to start getting in line as well. And then that reality just played out. It's only been like 8 months, but or no, it's been a year. Wow, it's been a year, but that scenario has played out, Pascal, and it's mind blowing to me. So, I mean, as an entrepreneur and CEO, having a place that the capital can park itself without me having to focus my cognitive, intellectual resources, human resources, and stress on just preserving the wealth that has been created already. I'm trying to focus on the future. I want all of my resources to go towards building the business, not having to be paranoid about, am I making the right investment decisions? Entrepreneurs shouldn't have to make constant investment decisions with the funds that they've created in terms of value. But hey, when the money printer goes burr, nobody has a choice. You have to do something about it.
And I think those are two great different scenarios. So on Pierce's front, so again, just to recap from a member strategy perspective, those listen to us, whether you're technology and construction, or it doesn't matter what space you're in, you could utilize Bitcoin from a innovation perspective. So Pierce, you're trying to stay ahead of everyone and demonstrate the innovation that you are as a company and as a team, and not being afraid to try new things. And for you, Taylor, being in the capital expense industry you are, right? In other words, whether you're fundraising equity, right, or you're fundraising, or you're doing non-dilutive fundraising through debt, either way, as you try to acquire those sources of capital, you're seeing supply chain issues, equipment going through the roof, things getting more and more expensive. So your budgets have to be adapted at all times. And that's the same for any member. And all of a sudden you have a potential solution like you did with Bitcoin that allows you to buy time, or to even accelerate time.
We're far ahead now as a result.
Exactly. And shall I say, without having to give up significant portions of the company, because Bitcoin's helping you is a non-dilutive source of growth on your balance sheet.
Yeah, Pascal. One thing that might be important to note for the listeners is that in all the years of growing this company, mm-hmm. what's ended up creating more retainable value and preserving it has been the Bitcoin investment to date. So, I mean, while the company was growing in its capabilities of delivering at a larger scale, we were still investing everything back into the business, but on the construction side of things, not the manufacturing so much. You have to maintain a pool of cash as sort of your clip of ammunition to be able to take on larger and larger projects and cash flow and be everybody's bank that you're working with. Mm-hmm. So if that bank happens to be growing in value because it's parked in Bitcoin, oh baby, we're off to the races.
Exactly. So this is where, again, as we're getting more into the strategic side of things, it's not a speculative investment. It literally is part of a CEO's capital allocation responsibilities to explore, where do I put my money, instead of a bank account that is generating 0.005 interest, or a treasury or a bond that's earning zero everywhere. So basically, I hope that this starts to open the minds and the eyes and the ears of members watching this, which is really where I want to go next. With my next question is, what message would you, Pierce and Taylor, give to fellow members watching to say, you owe it to you, your families, your employees, and your company to do that deeper dive? Of course, today's video isn't gonna answer every question, but it should be, hopefully, if we've allowed someone to open the door, I think we've done our job. So Pierce, I'd love to hear, what's the message to people watching this, saying why they should take that next step and do their research?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, who's watching this is spending a lot of time and effort trying to build their business, right? Every day you go to work and you're trying to grow, your business, you're trying to grow your investments, your wealth, and to take, 2 or 3 days to read a book, or do some research that is going to impact everything you do, to me, is like a very good use of your time. So even if you do the research and you decide, hey, I don't believe in this, or, you know, I think this is just a trend or whatever, that's fine. But I think it's important to at least learn and read about it and understand it more than just like the news headlines, which are not telling you the real story about what it is. So I would highly recommend reading the Bitcoin Standard, or there's a bunch of great podcasts out there on Bitcoin. And I think, like, and this is definitely the case for me, once I actually understood like Bitcoin and what it was, it set off a lot of light bulbs for me on why this is so important and why this is changing everything.
Amazing. I love that. And again, that's why we're all members here, is because we always want to get better, and having that open mindset is so critical. How about for you, Pierce? Sorry, Pierce, you already answered. As for you, Taylor, what's that message you'd like to tell everyone, to say, take what you've learned today and do that next leg, and maybe, like Pierce, share some interesting videos or tools or books that would help them continue their exploration?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of tools and continuing exploration, I think that you almost have to find those on your own. Other than the Bitcoin Standard, you need to go down the intellectual journey. We're not wasting our breath here talking to CEOs, because we know that you guys have a unique capacity, unique intellectual capacity, drive, and this is something that undoubtedly has popped up in your world a number of times. And if you're somebody who has a company, you're somebody who has money, so you're a human being, how could this not be something that you're going to take a deep dive into, contributing a huge amount of effort into fully understanding? And I can tell you that one of the reasons that that's popped up to me is that similar to where you live, what you eat, how you use your money and how you earn it, and what format your money takes place in. These are things that are deeply ingrained in our emotional centers because they're a part of our identity. And when something becomes a part of your identity and you've taken a position on something, there's sort of an emotional interference that can prevent your thinking mind from fully being capable of analyzing the situation the way that you would had there not been an interference preventing you from looking at this in an appropriate manner. This is something that I believe deserves your attention in an extreme way. And I encourage you to set aside any impulsive, negative pop-ups that might, all these pop-ups will jump into your mind, all these headlines. Ooh, it's gonna, everything, as Pierce mentioned, that you're gonna see in the newspaper. That's a whole other topic that we could go on for. Like we did on my podcast, Pascal. But yeah, I strongly recommend that you take your own personal journey and contribute enough learning capacity and resources as though you would if it were a project to save your life. Because one of my favorite terms that Michael Saylor uses, he says he says, if you're on an airplane that's with the engines that have blown out, is it speculation that you're going to need a parachute? Is it speculation if you're on a boat that is sinking in the middle of the ocean that you're going to need something else to float on? So just the way that he frames it is hilarious. But that's really what it looks like to me. I mean, the financial system as we know it is it's in hyperdrive. We're in what they're calling the modern economic theory, which is just print your way into solving your problems. And anyone with any amount of understanding as to where that leads based on history and math and all the other rational tools we have to evaluate this situation should conclude that Bitcoin's worth exploring. So I strongly encourage using all of your curiosity and skills to see where that will lead you.
Amazing. And look, and TEC will be publishing various, I think, blogs associated to this, and we could share some links. And I think Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy really open source to their entire conference, where they brought the Deloittes of the world. Like, we're not talking a few individuals who tried to weave their way into this. They wrote the corporate playbook legally, the legal framework, the accounting framework, the legislative framework with your board of directors. That they all talked about that, and it's all made available for. So no matter what size of company, that is a great source from a CEO's perspective. From a macro perspective, I think Taylor and Pierce both talked about the Bitcoin Standard being a great book to read. My last question, gentlemen. We're allowed to have some fun as well. So my question is, where do you see this going in the next 10 years, right? So the back in the day, you had people saying that Amazon is going to be the next pets.com, and then 2005 it's the next pets.com, and then 2008, well, yeah, Amazon's going to be the next pet.com. We're now 2021, and just in Ottawa we have 2 Amazon fulfillment centers, and that's just one city in North America. So I think it's safe to say that Amazon's no longer pets.com. So where do you guys think this is all going in the next 10 years? Pierce?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because I think no matter like how crazy of an answer I give right now, that it could be even more ingrained into our world and doing things that we didn't even think were possible. So in 10 years, my feeling is that it will be like the de facto store of value in the world, where people are, putting their money, if they even have any fiat money anymore, into Bitcoin. I think that it's going to be so ingrained into everything we do, right? Like, our phones are going to become digital wallets, and everything will be able to make transactions in some form of cryptocurrency. I don't think Bitcoin will be everything. I do think there will be, maybe 5 top cryptocurrencies that are used for different applications.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I wish I could see a glimpse of what that looks like, because I'm sure I would be blown away.
Sorry to put you on the spot as well, Taylor, but again, just having some fun with this. And you guys know I ask these questions all the time in the groups. 5 years, 10 years. So where do you think this is all going in the next 10?
What's really interesting about Bitcoin price action is, to me, is that a lot of people will look at the market cap, right, and they'll say, it's $1 trillion right now. So as soon as there's $1 trillion more ready to dump into Bitcoin, it'll be worth, the market cap will be 2 trillion, right? But there's a little bit of a supply and demand thing going on, where more and more people, as these institutions come into play and the price action moves that the dollar value a little bit higher, the people who needed the money, the people who needed to sell Bitcoin for fiat, there becomes less and less of them, and more long-term holders. At least this is the thesis that I have. So the effective price floor seems to rise over time. But when there's less and less people willing to sell those coins, and more institutions and people and companies banging on the door to get those coins, that drives the price up by an unknown multiple. We just know that it's not on par with the $1 trillion market cap and $1 trillion trying to dump into the system all at once. That's going to shoot the price up to the moon. So the mechanics of how Bitcoin operates technically is really interesting. I think, Pascal, you'll get into that later on.
Yeah.
But where I see all of this going is, I think as things heat up in the macroeconomic scenery of the whole world, you have really wild things happening in countries where their currencies perhaps are already being debased way faster than the Western world, and it's a bit of an emergency. Things like bank runs have occurred in the past. Things like having governments seize your funds, take your gold, confiscate your money. That's all happened before, and I think it's happening right now. There's lineups outside of ATMs in Asian countries right now where people are waiting for days just to withdraw money. So I think as things accelerate like this, we could see Bitcoin become the base layer for payments, settling payments globally. So that takes a big chunk out of the existing infrastructure like Visa and all these payment settlement companies. I think they will be forced to code over top of the Lightning Network and add additional layers using the Bitcoin settlement layer. So a lot of cool things are going to happen in that regard. But with regard to pricing, I'm pretty damn sure we're going to see above $1 million Bitcoin. It only takes a $10 trillion market cap to, on par with gold, to see a $500,000 Bitcoin. And I think as soon as it's clear that the system is moving in that direction and eating gold's lunch, as it seems to have been doing, especially this year, I think more and more institutional investors are going to just pile on, and it's going to be a frenzy, and the number of people willing to sell is going to diminish. The miners themselves are going to stop wanting to sell. And at the same time, you have a force for good where nobody can manipulate this store of wealth. It's influencing the use and the adoption of sustainable energy systems across the world. It enables energy arbitrage. There's a cyclone of wonderful benefits to the human race that this thing offers. And even just out of principle, aside from monetary enhancement, I'm very interested in paying close attention to Bitcoin. What it will do over the next 10 years, I think, is going to be spectacular. And I want to be at the forefront of it. So happy to chat.
Fantastic. Well, great stuff. And again, it's the Metcalfe's law. It's not just about monetary value. It's about value because of the services it can provide. And we'll talk more about that with the folks over at TEC in terms of what is happening in decentralized finance from that perspective, the billions of unbanked from that perspective, the macro landscape, other projects coming in. It's a fascinating world. So my last question is really just a how do we stay in touch question with everyone. I know we really do appreciate your time, but I know you have each fast businesses that require your attention to get back to. So final question is anything else that you'd like to say, and how can we stay in touch? How can TEC members reach out to you? I know you're both pretty active on social media. So Taylor, wrap it up. Anything else you'd like to say, and how can we, us fellow members, stay in touch?
If you're a contractor or involved in the construction world at all, and you're particularly interested in sustainable technologies, shoot me a line at smartgreencities.io, purepave.com, but connect with me personally, please. Taylor Davis 613 on LinkedIn and Davis Theory on Twitter. Amazing. Pierce.
Yeah, so same kind of thing. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to chat more. If you're interested in learning more about Knak, you can find us at knak.com.
Amazing. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you for your time and a fascinating discussion. And again, I really do think that members will get tremendous value. And if there's a few that want to open that door, hopefully they stay in touch and we continue our discussion as a pan-Canadian macro Bitcoin landscape discussion would be pretty cool. So thanks again, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks so much, Pascal.
Thanks, Pascal.
Sounds good.